Hey, deserving listeners. One of the things that my students are almost always asking me about, and they don't just ask me about it once, they ask me about it dozens of times, is how do I start a private practice? How do I get clients? How do I stay ethical? How do I stay connected? How do I take a headshot? How do I get supervision? How do I get fully licensed? How do I market myself? Who do I connect with? How do I get an office? What kind of chair should I have? All these kinds. Where should I have the office? Should I have a home office? There's just so many questions in it. And one of the things that we do as a training program is we train people to be therapists, but we don't actually formally train people for private practice. We train people to work at several different jobs. And a lot of people are interested in private practice in my field. If you don't know, if you're not in the field, you probably don't know this, but if you are in the field, you probably do know this. Is because when you work in public mental health or community agencies, they are often highly stressful and you don't get paid a lot. Whereas private practice is usually a lot less stress, a lot less paperwork, a lot less hassle, and like in terms of money could pay you 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 10 times as much as a job at an agency. And so students are frequently coming to me and saying, let's talk about private practice. And another thing that so there's that, and then I'll spend time in class talking about it, but it never really satiates their needs. They're always like, okay, I still have more questions, even though we've been talking about it for 3 hours. But the other thing I do is I actually will also survey students and graduates regarding what they think about the program. And inevitably, someone will say, a minority of people will say, I wish there was more support for private practice. I wish there was a class on private practice. I wish, you just helped us with that because it's so complicated and we just need help with it. And it just seems like the training program should provide it. And as someone who has been program director, I'm here to tell you, like, if we add that as a class, that would be cumbersome to people that don't want to go into private practice, right? And if we added an elective, it's just a question. You're just, as a program director, you're always just kind of thinking about whether or not it would actually work within the program. Well, as part of a solution to this, one of our esteemed instructors, Laura Mathews, who's been on the podcast before talking about eating disorders, if you remember in the past, and she and her partner have opened a new workshop to talk about how to build and maintain a private practice in mental health. And so I thought I'd have her on the show to talk about her workshop and maybe about this topic in general. Welcome to the podcast, Laura.
Thanks.
So would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, my name's Laura Mathews Gransberry. I just got married in September, and I'm trying to make that name conversion, which is difficult, both logistically and also just within the profession. So I'm kind of going by both right now. I'm teaching faculty at Antioch, and I have a private practice in West Seattle.
You were a graduate of the Couple and Family Therapy program, as was I.
Correct.
And so you're here to talk about that. So you tell us about the journey you went on regarding this topic. Why did you want to start this workshop?
I wanted to, my husband and I, wanted to help is the most basic way to say that. When he and I met, I was working at an eating disorder clinic. You mentioned I talked about that before. So I had worked in residential facilities for, the better part of 5 years, and had always known that my dream was private practice, but there was this seemingly mountain to climb in between that. From where I was to opening private practice seemed impossible for a variety of reasons. And when Dustin and I got together, he's very business minded. He's opened business, has opened businesses, runs businesses, is in tech business stuff right now.
Right. He's part of, correct me if I'm wrong, the Seattle subculture of startup culture.
Startup. Mm-hmm.
Like they call it, I'm working on a new startup, or
Yeah.
I'm working on investments for startups. There's this, I have friends and actually family members who are into that in Seattle, and it's always interesting to hear them talk.
Yes.
They have a different language.
It's a different perspective on what's possible.
But even a different language. Like they use different words for things,
Yeah, I used the word bandwidth the other day. I was talking to you about something and you're like, does that come from your husband?
Yeah. You're like, I'm just wondering if I have enough bandwidth for that.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, that sounds like
Definitely.
startup talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he was talking with you about this sort of stuff.
Yeah. And really was, as someone that loved and cared about me, was seeing the stress and strain and financial struggle that I was having at my job. And so he started asking questions, what's the dream? What do you want to do? What's keeping you from doing that? Just being really loving and curious. And I told him the dream had always been private practice. And so he asked, why not? And I had a laundry list of reasons why that was scary and difficult. But the main list of reasons could really be grouped into a lack of knowledge of how. Mm-hmm. And needing some guidance in that area and, a step-by-step guide of some kind. I didn't feel like that I had that. And it was scary to think about going from a salaried job to next to nothing as you're building is a big part of that. So, and
the uncertainty of your income.
Absolutely.
Even if you do have a steady income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it fluctuates, and it does.
Yeah.
So it's, I didn't know anything about how to prepare for that financially, and even when the practice is built and flourishing, how to navigate a $1,000 swing, from one month to the next. Sometimes we got married in September, so November was a financially rough month because I had, took almost 3 weeks off in September, and I didn't know how to navigate those things. And so it was a very daunting, scary thing. And
yeah, just a side note on that is when I talk with students about this, I say, well, you want to have, say, $5,000 to $10,000 cash in your checking account just in case you have a downturn in your client load.
Right.
And the looks that I get from their faces, they're like
deer in the headlights.
like they're like $10,000 cash. I'm having trouble coming up with money for the parking meter.
Right.
How in the world? And I'm like, well, you understand, because these are students who are shoveling out lots of money for their training, and they are working for free at an internship site.
Absolutely.
And so here I am telling them, look, you will be making money at this eventually, no matter what. Yes. It's just a matter of how much. If you're at an agency, you'll earn this much. If you're in private practice, eventually you'll earn this much. And having $10,000 cash in the bank is actually not that hard to achieve when you, especially when you have a full-time private practice.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I think people run into is just like a general lack of self-esteem regarding, am I worth it? Would someone come to me? Would people actually pay money? Because again, people start out in training feeling like they're crap, like they know nothing and they'll never be good at it ever.
Right.
There's just this. I've never met a student who thought, "Yeah, I'm going to be a good therapist."
Great.
Yeah, I mean, they hope, right? And then they start internship site and they're begging for hours. Please let me work for free. Please give me clients, and it creates this mindset for therapists early on that they're worth nothing, mm-hmm. and that they are, as a gift, people give them clients so they can work for free.
Right.
It's like, thank you so much for giving me this client so I can work for free.
Right.
Oh my God, I'm so lucky. And the idea of actually being paid $150 an hour by a client is like absurd to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they're probably are, if you worked in what they're paying for their training, they're probably paying $150 themselves to get the client. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, so go on with your story.
And I remember what that was like. I remember being there and being that struggling student, so poor, just, definitely. I was working at the time, as well as doing school and internship, which was a whole nother can of worms. I was crazy. But just trying to make rent, and what does that look like and feel like, and I remember that. And then when I graduated and was working in these agencies, that it got better. I got paid, first of all, and I got paid more than I was making at my non-industry, non-clinical job. So at first I was really excited because somebody was paying me for what I went to school for. And then it just got to be a kind of a grind, that's not enough for the amount of effort that I'm putting out. And
and working at an agency, you worked at an inpatient eating disorder facility, and it's noble work.
It is.
It's important work.
I learned a lot. Yeah.
You get paid. You get a steady paycheck. You get health insurance. You get support. You get supervision. You get a lot of things that are really wonderful. And so we're not saying that working at these agencies is substandard somehow.
Of course not.
There's pros and cons, and there's different career paths. You and I are going to speak a little biased for private practice because that's the lifestyle that we like. And so we should just keep that in mind.
Of course.
And so, because for some people, the stress of being in private practice is way worse than the stress of working at an agency.
Yeah, it's definitely a personal decision, personal choice about, where you want your stress to come from. I still have very close friends and community that work in these places, and they will tell me outright every time I talk about private practice, they say I would never want to deal with all of that. And that's their choice, and that's for them.
Right.
And it works for them.
Right. They go to work.
Yep.
They get paid no matter what.
Absolutely.
They never have to worry.
They get PTO.
and so, okay. So your husband's talking with you about this, or your fiance or partner at the time.
Yeah.
And you're thinking about opening your practice, and then what?
Yeah. And we sort of landed on the decision to go forth and prosper. There was one weekend, I remember I woke up and it had been a particularly stressful week, and I think it was a Sunday, and I just woke up with this feeling of I need to get out of Dodge. I have to go somewhere else other than Seattle. So we hopped on a ferry and we went over to Bainbridge and had breakfast, the Steamliner, I think it was called, cute little place. And this poor waitress, we sat at that table for 2 hours talking about this process, and it was in that moment that we decided that this was the way to go, and set out a plan for when I would leave my job and how to navigate this changeover. And I didn't feel like I had the bandwidth, the mental capacity to start the gears turning in private practice while I was still putting forth so much effort at my job. It just seemed really overwhelming to me. So I quit my job and then pursued the build of the private practice. And it took a very long time because I didn't have the step-by-step guide. I was learning all the things myself and reaching out to people that I had known that had gone into private practice and picking their brain and what did you do and how did you do that and what's the right resource for this. And, I tapped all my resources,
right, and
which is the only thing I could do.
Right, that's the typical path,
right,
is to reach out to just people who might have information.
Yeah.
And some of the information, since it's not formalized or researched, is going to be anecdotal,
right,
and false,
right.
And I think you're exhibiting part of the that we're leading up to in terms of you developing your workshop, is that the resources are pretty limited.
Yeah.
And which is strange because it's a complicated thing, but there's hard factual knowledge that can be imparted to people.
Yeah.
And just no one's really, to my knowledge, I'm sure there are other trainers in the area or online or something.
And there are.
But no one that really has risen to the top in terms of like, oh, you got to do this training or something,
Right.
what I mean?
At least not that the students that we teach know. It's not a common thing that they walk around campus talking about, like, oh, this is the resource that you go to for these things. No one talks like that on campus.
No.
So, and it wasn't there when I was there.
And I just to chime in on that a little bit is that it's a total pain in the butt to have a workshop that as I'm sure you know now, that for continuing education. I mean, this isn't for continuing education
No.
yet, it's for yourself. But so for those not in the know, all clinicians have to get a certain amount of continuing education after graduation to uphold their license. And so there's a lot of different workshops out there. And I have done some of that work myself, and you basically have to do it because you love it. It's not a huge money-making scheme. It's something that you do for fun or to, I don't know, network or something. And so you do a lot of work, and you have to basically drum up people to come. You know, it's not like there's this network where you instantly just sort of sign up, and you have to actually advertise and we've had Rebecca Bloom on the podcast, and she does continuing education unit courses, and you'll hear her talk about recruiting people and stuff. And, it's hard. And so for someone to step forward and say, I am going to be the guru on how to open a practice, and I'm going to deal with all of that work and everything. It's a commitment that I'm sure some have done, but after a while they're just like, I'm going to go back to just taking the easy road. Eventually you got to a place where you wanted to do that. You wanted to step forward and say, okay, I'm going to do this. But the difference that you did was you didn't take the continuing education route. You just took we're going to, correct me if I'm wrong, create a regional resource, maybe a national, international resource, regional.
We'll see where this goes.
But
right now we have one workshop date.
But at least regional resource for people in the Seattle area who want to attend a workshop and learn how to open a practice or maintain the practice.
Yeah.
And from the looks of it, you're committing. This is a long-term thing that you're going to do.
Hopefully.
You're going to push through the initial phases of whatever kind of annoyances. You have a huge website that has lots of different things on it. And it involves you as a therapist, but also your husband, who is a startup person. Both of you are training people on how to open a business. So why did you decide to take that leap and just, commit because it sounds like you're really committing for a long time for look, this is a long-term gig. We're going to be doing this for a long time and build, almost like building a private practice in a sense. We're going to build a brand. We're going to build
I hadn't thought about it that way.
And we're in it to win it. So why did you make that choice?
Because once I had started the practice and I was in it and I had a solid, base of clients and felt like I was able to tell people things are clicking, things are churning. I feel comfortable now. And I started reflecting on my journey and how cumbersome and, for lack of a better word, ridiculous that felt, that it took that long and had to be that hard.
Sort of haphazard.
And just really in it. I'm kind of an efficiency fanatic, and it seemed really inefficient to me. And then Dustin and I started talking about it even further, and what a barrier that is for people going into private practice, and how I felt that barrier that I had feared was true, right? Mm-hmm. And how could we help that? A lot of what I went into this field for was to help other people, help clients, and how do I reach even more people than the people I see in my office? And if I can help people go into private practice and serve the people they are passionate about serving, that feels good, you know? And
so just to chime in, because people might already be thinking where do I go to find information? What's the website called?
It's called openyourpractice.com.
Openyourpractice.com.
Yep.
And you are currently having a workshop on Mercer Island?
Yeah, it's at the Mercer Island Community Center on April 21st.
It's 2018, because some people might be listening to this 10 years from now.
Yeah, that's true.
So April what?
April 21st, 2018.
2018. It's a full day.
It's 9 to 3, yep.
And if they go to your website, they can register.
Yes.
And what will you be talking about at that workshop?
So many things. Everything from business structure setup, office setup, practice management tools and solutions. I have a great digital practice management system that I will promote because I love it so much and my clients love it. So that's, it's tried and true there. I have been a client of a therapist who's used it, so I've seen that end of it as well, and I love that.
What are you talking about? What kind of management? Like file management?
So it's a digital practice essentially. It's called, well, I'll talk about it. It's called Counsel, which is short for Counseling Solutions, and it does everything. It does charting. It holds all of my forms. It does all of my billing, like electronic insurance claims. You
pay monthly, and it's encrypted, and it's like HIPAA compliant.
Everything's HIPAA compliant from...
How much is it a month?
I was just on there actually, and I think their prices have gone up about $10, so mine's $49.99 a month.
Okay.
Which is a completely nominal fee for the massive amount of work that it does for me.
Yeah. So billing and...
Yeah, and you can do, I think for an extra $10 a month, if you do telehealth, do...
Distance
counseling, therapy.
It'll...
Their portal there is HIPAA compliant, and so all of that. Cool. It's pretty cool.
So, so your workshop is talking about that, and you'll be holding workshops, I think you said twice a year? Is that what it is?
We'll see how quickly this builds. I mean, if we need to run one once a month, we will.
Yeah.
The first one the room holds 49, so it's small. But we'll see how it goes. I'm hopeful. I really, the mission is to, it's on our website. The mission is to help 1,000 clinicians go into private practice by the year 2020. So we'll see.
As a few people have already told me that they've signed up because I have been promoting it to people I know.
Yeah.
And one student said, she's a student currently right now, she was like, there's no way I can afford the price at this point because I am a struggling student on loans. Some students are saying like, oh, it's worth the price because it's
right.
Do you want to talk about how much it costs?
Yeah. So because I'm an Antioch alum and I teach at Antioch, there is a discount for Antioch students. So for Antioch students and alumni, it's $249. And for the general public, it's $299.
Yeah. And so for some people, and I was one of those people back in the day, I'd be like $250 for just a workshop. Like that is insane. That $250, like, that'll buy me a lot of hamburgers at McDonald's. You know what I mean?
Which is true.
Yeah. But the thing is that, and what I was telling people yesterday was that, it's up to everyone to decide how they want to budget their life, of course. But but the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is how much private practice costs to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, and the idea is that they're just minor expenses for a lot of revenue eventually, right?
Right. That's the takeaway point.
Right.
Definitely.
You pay, I mean, I charge $150 an hour for supervision.
Right.
And you need 100 hours of supervision. You need 200 hours if you don't come from an accredited program like Antioch. And so at least a typical graduate in private practice is being supervised, and they are being charged, what is that? $1,500, right? Mm-hmm. $1,500 to $3,000 just on supervision. And if you don't go to one of these workshops, then you're talking with your supervisor about marketing and about how, what sort of online encrypted file service you're getting advice from a supervisor who might not know what they're talking about,
right?
Or is just sort of calling upon their own anecdotal evidence, whereas you're formalizing the facts, and I'm guessing really trying to provide like good information and make sure it's all good. And so $250 in relation, and then you think about renting an office, which in Seattle can be like $500 to $1,000. Mm-hmm. You're thinking about advertising yourself, and paying for Facebook ads or something. It costs money,
right,
to be in private practice, and a workshop for $250 in light of all that is really minor.
Yeah, and the way I was looking at it too, and the way Dustin and I talked about it. This is his business mind. He said if somebody had told you at the outset that $250 would save you months and lots of hours, and hours in this field equal money, so if you could have saved that much time and and effort, would you have paid that? And I said all day long and twice on Sunday, because it's again, my efficiency, the efficiency part of myself. And really what we're trying to focus on here is a very, I don't want to use simple in a bad way, but to make this process as simple and easy as possible. In an effort of efficiency,
I'm guessing everyone would love it to be simple.
Yeah. That would, at the moment that I went on this journey, that would have been almost priceless to me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's take a break, and when we come back, let's continue the conversation. What do you say, Laura?
Yep.
All right, we're back from the break. If you haven't become a patron of the podcast, do so now. Go to patreon.com. When you become a patron of the podcast, you get access to all of our patron-exclusive episodes in which we do deep dives on various different things. So we're back here with Laura Mathews. What's your new last name again? Gransberry. So in the future, everyone will just know you as Laura Gransberry.
Yes.
And so I've been recommending for a long time a podcast called Practice of the Practice.
Yeah.
Run by, oh man, I used to know his name off the top of my head, but
is it Steve?
Steve Sanek. His last name's Sanek, I think. Anyway, he has a podcast called Practice of the Practice, and he's had it, I'm guessing, for like a long time. It's probably like 6 or 7 years. And on this podcast, he does episodes on how to build a private practice. And he's had a really excellent website where I remember discovering him early on. I didn't need to listen to his podcast, but I was just curious what advice he was giving, and so I'd listen occasionally. But he also has a website in which, back in the day, maybe he still does this, in which he would fully disclose exactly how he built his practice, how much money he was making. I mean, he posted his exact revenue and where it was coming from.
He still does that.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and I remember just being like, "Whoa, that is a lot of self-disclosure."
Yeah.
You know, he's just saying, "This is how much I earn, and this is where I get it from, and I get consultation fees and all this kind of stuff." Anyway, so he's been doing that for a while, and I've been recommending his podcast to people who are in the asking similar questions as what we were talking about earlier. What's different about what you guys are doing?
Well, the main difference is that it's in person, which is important for me, would have been important for me. I learned very well in an experiential, which is why I went to Antioch, in an experiential setting. So the idea of, and when I started out, I looked at those kinds of things online. There was actually a myriad of stuff, available resources of things, making suggestions about marketing and things like that. It just wasn't enough for me. And I really latched on and liked this idea of creating a classroom setting, which is what students are used to, and having that in-person, real-time Q&A experience.
I'm guessing it's also more concise because his podcast by now must be like hundreds of hours of content, which is one way of getting that information, but maybe some people don't want to sift through all that time.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing.
Yeah, we're going to cover a lot of information in a short amount of time. And I think that's a benefit. That's really, again, something that was very intentional, something that I was looking for on the get-go.
Yeah. Are you going to have like advanced classes eventually?
We've talked about it.
Yeah.
We've talked about advanced marketing classes, things like that. Just,
Well, what do you say
expanding.
to people when they're thinking like, what's one tip that you can give around marketing? Because the main question people have is like, how do I get clients?
Right.
What do you say?
The big barrier there is oftentimes for therapists in this field that are, I make this joke, right? Like we signed up for a profession where we lock ourselves in a room with people, then don't like interact with.
And it's all secretive.
Right. Big crowds are generally difficult, and then God forbid talk about yourself to other people. The tip there, the encouragement there is to don't look at it like you are marketing yourself. Look at it as though you are building relationships, because that's what we're good at. We're good at creating alliances with our clients. That's the hope. And if you go to a talk or a workshop or a quote unquote networking event and focus less on, I'm here to market myself and I want to pass out 10 business cards, and more about, oh, I heard this conversation over here. This person, does this type of family therapy. That's really interesting. I want to talk to that person and get to know them and tell them about what I'm doing and create a an organic alliance there. That's marketing.
Yeah.
You are telling people what you're doing. And being curious about what they're doing, and you're creating, your intentional community. And then referral partners come out of that. And that's just one way. That's not the way, but.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
But I like it because it's not just a tip to follow, but actually is, I think, empathetic to where therapists come from.
Yeah.
And the way you said it, I'm guessing, would really resonate with people, especially if you led with that one, right? Because like you said, therapists people say, I want to become a therapist because I want to help people. I want to make a difference. I want to be a therapist. They don't sign up to be a therapist because they love to market themselves
right.
on the internet. It's usually the opposite of what they do. In fact, a lot of therapists, this sort of relates to what I was talking about earlier, I have to actually break them of the habit or the style of life that they have where they deprecate themselves, where they say, well, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
Or, who am I to say that I should be getting clients when there's other therapists that are probably better than me, Yeah. It's like, no. Like, sure, other therapists might be better than you, but you're worth it. You're a rock. I say this a lot. It's like, you're a rock star.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing that I said a couple of weeks ago to my students was that, in a few months, 6 months, you're going to be graduated. Mm-hmm. And the difference between you and me will be nothing. The only difference will be that I just have more confidence in what I do.
Yeah.
I have much more experience, but in terms of the marketability of you and me is actually the same. And they're all looking at me like, that's insane.
No way.
They're just like, that's insane. There's no way. You're Kirk Honda. You're da da da. And I'm like, no. That's just my brand.
Yeah.
I'm just an idiot trying to figure this out like anybody else. And you just think I know what I'm talking about, but I really don't. And if you believe in yourself, the day after you graduate, you are totally capable, especially when you get your associate license, you are authorized to be in private practice.
Yes.
And all you have to do is to say like you're super competent, and in all these various different areas, you don't want to be unethical and arrogant that way, but your ability to listen, your ability to heal, your ability to hear people, your ability to facilitate communication, your ability to diagnose, your ability to look things up, your ability to get support, your ability to figure things out is no different from me. You're the same. And you can charge as much or more than me if you just say to yourself, I'm worth it.
Yeah.
It's your choice. But if you choose to believe that you're not worth it, then you're not.
Right.
And that's a choice you make. It's not an empirical science. There's,
right.
Someone can graduate and get their associate license and charge double what I charge and say that they're worth twice as much. And I have no empirical proof to say that they're not worth twice as much as
right.
me. It just matters about if people are willing to pay that price. And a lot of people in Seattle right now are willing to pay quite a bit for therapy because therapy is highly valued in Seattle. And there's a lot of young people looking for therapy. There's a lot of couples looking for people like you and me. A lot of families with kids looking for people like you and me. A lot of individuals. And lots of disposable income.
Yeah.
And then especially once you get paneled by insurance, then there's a lot of opportunity there. But anyway, that's what I tell people. So you just have to believe in yourself. So I say, believe that you're the shit. Believe that you're a rock star because you are. Think of all the money and all the time you've spent on this profession. Have you ever spent this much time and effort on training for a job? When you go to another job, they put you down in front of a VHS tape and you watch it for an hour. That's your training. You have spent tens of thousands of dollars, 3 or 4 years of your life, blood, sweat, and tears to get to this point where you're qualified to do this thing. You're a rock star, man.
Yeah.
You are a highly trained, highly educated individual. and you should believe in yourself. And it's just like they're looking at me like I can see the spark, building, but it's like a tiny little faint little spark. They're just like, okay, I think I wish I could
maybe
internalize
I'll consider
that.
That's true. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So,
and with all that anxiety that you have just in those things that you were talking about alone, on top of I have no idea how to structure this business, can be crippling.
Yeah.
And so that's the mission here, is that we're trying to take the fear and anxiety out of the business side of it. When you are not educated about all of those things, there's a lot to be afraid of. But when you are educated about how to build and run and deal with the day-to-day mechanics of business ownership and entrepreneurship, owning your own business, there's a lot less to be afraid of. You feel very much empowered, at least I do at this point, to know how this works. And I'm not afraid of taxes in the way that I used to be, which is, I remember that day when we did my taxes last year. I was like, oh, I get it. This is so exciting. I'm not afraid of this anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's an awesome place to be. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And your husband is almost like a professional business helper of people to build their business, right?
Yeah. So. And what most people don't know is that he actually, before he went into tech, because he's like this forever learner, he's kind of a Renaissance person in that way, and that he's already had like 7 careers and it's crazy. But he was a certified health and nutrition coach. So he has built a private practice, not only just businesses for tech companies, but he built his health coaching private practice from the ground up as well. So he brings that. He brings certainly the business mindedness aspect of how this stuff runs to the table.
Right, which is important. And again, something that we're both probably always telling people in this position of just like, the wording that I use with people to help them transition to a mindset that is necessary for building a private practice. Because they're coming to me and they're just like, so how do I, as a therapist, how do I get clients? They'll say, and I'll be like, well, first off, you're thinking about it and they'll tell me more, and I'll be like, first off, you're thinking about it the wrong way. Think about it like you're opening a dry cleaning business or a restaurant.
Interesting.
Okay. Or a dog grooming business or something. Like it really, there are therapeutic elements to it, but you're starting a business. Mm-hmm. And you need to get customers. Mm-hmm. And how does any restaurant get people into the door?
Right.
And if you ask that question, sometimes I'll just do it. It's like, so just let's say you're starting a restaurant. How do you get people to get in the door? They're like, well, you got to advertise. Mm-hmm. You got to have like deals, maybe coupons. Mm-hmm. You got to, I don't know, get on the radio and talk about your new restaurant.
Or a podcast.
Yeah, podcast. You have to have a good product. You have to, your storefront has to look nice, or mm-hmm. your tables have to look nice. You have to, when people come in, they have to have a good experience.
Yeah.
They're going to write reviews on Yelp about you. And so it's like, okay, well, some things are a little different, but really it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. And that's the mindset you have to have. And it's not rocket science,
right.
It's attainable, and you learn as you go, but that's the mindset you want to have. And I've had the opportunity to supervise a lot of, therapists who are starting out in their private practice. And I have seen many different paths. Mm-hmm. I had a supervisee who had 1 or 2 clients in the first 3 years.
Wow.
Total. So that's at the low end.
Right.
And then I've had people at the high end who will have a full-time practice, full-time marriage and family practice within 2 or 3 months. Mm-hmm. And I've seen everything in between. Lately, I don't know what it is, but I've been seeing a lot of people build practices very quickly lately. Mm-hmm. There's probably no research on it in the area, but I'm guessing, and I wonder what your thoughts are, that it just has to do with all the factors I was talking about earlier in terms of the culture around therapy has been changing. Seattle mm-hmm. is particular about that. Younger people are even more open to going to counseling. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of young people in Seattle and the area moving here for Amazon or Microsoft mm-hmm. or Starbucks or what are the what are the other places that people work,
Yeah.
and they are alone or they're building a new relationship and they want to go to therapy. And then you add all the money and the health insurance options and
Right.
everything, and you just get kind of a perfect storm for a lot of opportunities for therapists to have clients. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's just a tremendous amount of growth happening in Seattle, period, no matter what. Obviously, we have more tower cranes here, I think, than anywhere else in the U.S. We can't build things fast enough for the influx of people that move here on a daily basis. So there's that. And there's also, which is so encouraging to me that you're speaking to, is this, even though there's still a stigma that we fight about therapy and people seeking help, that is softening. And it's so comforting to see. I used to spend a couple sessions sometimes with people helping fight that, and I have to be here and I'm broken, there's something wrong with me. And I've noticed a little bit of a shift in the direction of, no, I'm just here because this, people ask for help and that's okay. Mm-hmm. So that's really refreshing. I also had a conversation with Paul David quite a while ago, actually, and he said he made a good point that a lot of the baby boomers are retiring out of their practices in the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. And that is I'm not certain on the statistic or the percentage. I should have researched that for this talk, but it's a large number of clinicians that are going to retire out of their practices soon.
Yeah, I remember you said that to me a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what we were talking about, but I think you said that. And at the time I was just like, well, how many baby boomers relative to other generations could there possibly be? But when you said that, it makes total sense because of what's happening at Antioch. I mean, when I started full time at Antioch in 2009, I was the youngest instructor by far. Rebecca Bloom, I think, is a little older than me. So it's just basically me and Rebecca who were around 40, and everyone else was not even in their 50s.
Yeah.
They were mid-60s or in their 70s. And that was across all the programs, not just the psychology programs. It was education. It was everywhere. Everyone was not only in of that age, but they were also had been there for a long time. They had been at Antioch for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And in the last 5 years, there's been this humongous changing of the guard, where all those people are retiring.
Right.
And all the new hires, naturally, I don't know naturally, but for whatever reason, we end up hiring a lot of young people like yourself. I mean, you're
33.
You're 33, and you're full time.
Yes.
So and you're might even be kind of on the older side of some of the new hires. Anyway, the point is you're a typical hire.
Right.
A lot of the new full time people, not only in our program but in other programs, are in their 30s. Some people are in their 20s. So it's shifted where now I'm the old fogey because now I'm 47 now.
Yeah.
And I am now not only one of the more senior persons and coming soon. I mean, Paul Davis sort of half-time, but if you ignore him, like in the psychology programs, I'm trying to think of another person who's been there longer than me.
I don't.
In all of the,
so.
Janice Hoshino started. She started.
Yeah.
She started when I started as an adjunct.
Okay.
Ann Blake is an adjunct now, so or maybe half-time, but anyway. She started around the same time I did when I started as an adjunct. But aside from that, I'm trying to think of anyone who's been there longer than me. And I mean, Ned, I guess, is still part of the PhD program. Anyway, the point is that I am not only one of the more senior people by far, mm-hmm. but I'm also like one of the oldest people by far. Mm-hmm. So that is indicative of this phenomenon that Paul was saying, is that you have all these 60s, 70s year old therapists who are retiring, and it's creating this huge vacuum for starting out therapists to gobble up all the clients. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. So if you're in the Seattle region, it's like you can go out to Issaquah or even like, Edmonds or down to Tacoma. There's growth I've found anecdotally in all those areas. Yeah. Or I'm just such an amazing supervisor that translates into successful practices. I don't know. Yeah. Well, so anything else we haven't talked about in terms of your workshop? What's the website called again?
Openyourpractice.com.
Openyourpractice.com. And they can go there to sign up for workshops. And the next one is in April of 2018, but you'll presumably have other ones in the future. Yeah. And so what else haven't we talked about today?
There's this element where I think a lot of people that are listening to this podcast that are interested in opening private practice, that are staring at this mountain in front of them, wondering how to climb it. How do I get to the top? Can I go around the bottom? Like, how do we navigate this seemingly terrifying endeavor? I was there. That was me. I have been there, and
You've been to the top of the mountain.
I've been to the top of the mountain. I feel like I'm at the top of the mountain, and I want to pull people along. Remove this barrier that when you're at the top is not that scary. And I feel that we've done a really great job in simplifying this process and creating a platform that is accessible and really relevant to what's going on today and how to get this sounds so cliche, get that dream off the ground. It was really a dream of mine, and to get that private practice business off the ground, and I did it, and I'm standing on the other side saying, there's lots of clinicians that are standing on the other side that can say that that's possible. Mm-hmm. And I just want people to know that we're here to help. We're here to help take the anxiety and fear out, and we're here to talk about the business of therapy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and as you're talking, I'm thinking, I'm glad that I hired you as a teacher, because that's the true mark of a good teacher in therapy is someone who obsesses about helping people who are just starting out.
It is kind of an obsession of mine. I never thought about it that way, but that resonates a lot with me. Yeah. I have been through my journey, and I want to help people navigate that. And it's, full stop. That's totally true.
Right. It's a calling that people have. And we've talked about this before on the podcast, I think. I know we've talked about it in person, is when you first started out, I didn't know if you were going to be a good teacher or not.
Yeah, you said that, I remember.
Because you came to me and you were like, well, I'm interested in teaching. And I was like, okay, well, how about you assistant teach one of my classes? And I was like, in my head, I was like, this could go a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Because I've been burned before. I've had people come to me in this way before, and I've had it go not so great. Mm-hmm. And so just because someone wants to be a teacher doesn't mean they're going to be a good teacher.
Right.
And right away, I was like impressed. I mean, you were pretty raw because you'd never done it before, mm-hmm. but I was like, whoa, and I have a pretty low expectation because it's a hard thing to teach,
Yeah.
And it's also, you can't invent passion. You can't invent a obsession with helping people. And that was present right from the start, with it was a family of origin class. It's first quarter students. And right away, whenever there was a question from a student or a vibe in the room that needed, that there were question marks in the room, mm-hmm. you stepped in and you're just like, well, let me help you with that. Let me answer your questions. You didn't just sit back and go like, well, I don't know. There's question marks. Who cares? You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is what I would consider to be more normal behavior.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's more normal to be like, well, I don't know the answer to that. Like, go figure it out yourself. Why are you asking? Why are you asking me?
Yeah.
Whereas you would feel very compelled to answer the question and want to help them out. And so, it's a mark of a true teacher. And it's funny because if in another sort of realm, if you were, say, a teacher of entrepreneurs in general, you know what I mean?
Okay.
If you were just like, I am giving a workshop on how to make money in finance or something, it just has such a sleazy kind of connotation to it. But when it could be seen as that what you're doing, but I know that it's not, because it comes from the heart, Yeah. And that's what I was telling people yesterday when they were talking about the price. I was like, actually, for a full day of a professional workshop like this, it actually should be a lot more,
That's what I had heard that from other students too. Like, oh, I just paid hundreds of dollars more than that for this other thing over here, workshop over here. I think it was the Gottman level 1 or 2 or something. And so they're like, that's actually a really reasonable price, which is encouraging to hear. And
right. Right. So it's not a money grab, it's trying to build a business and you want to get paid for it, but at the same time, it's a passion project that you and your husband have has a lot of altruistic, purpose to it that I just have to say, maybe I'm being a jerk. I just don't think exists when you have a workshop to teach, financial people on how to make more money. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's just me being, prejudiced or something. But anyway, so thanks for coming on the podcast, Laura, and talking about, again, plug your website again.
Openyourpractice.com.
Openyourpractice.com. Go there, check out what they have. I'm guessing now and in the future, you'll just have articles or things.
Yeah, we're going to add and build more content. That's the other part of that, is that there's not much right now because we're just starting out. But once we do this, and you can actually, that's something I should say, you can subscribe to a newsletter on the website. So we'll do a publication of, some kind of offering, if you subscribe to the newsletter, and little tips and tidbits and stories and things like that. So at the very least, go to the website and subscribe to the newsletter because it'll be pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining me us out there. Please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.